Hi everyone. Okay, so just thought I would do a live video basically to sort of explain to you guys how I got into conservation, and I thought it might help some of you, especially if you're at university or if you're at the stage where you're still at school and you're trying to pick what you want to do at university or what A-levels you want to do. Hi everyone. That's great. I'm guessing everyone can hear me. Okay, cool. So I realise some of you guys might not know me. So hello, I'm Lara. I'm 24 years old and I'm a zoologist and a conservation biologist. So I'll just give you sort of a quick background into me, and then we can start talking about the nitty-gritty stuff and what you guys need to do to get into conservation. So I've always wanted to work with animals. I've always loved nature. I was really lucky that my family was quite outdoorsy and we'd always go for walks at the weekend or for hikes and things like that. And my dad was so into nature and he really taught me about all the trees and the local birds and things like that. So I've always been fascinated with wildlife. At the time when I was younger, the only career I knew about that you could work with animals was to be a vet. And that's what I wanted for pretty much my entire childhood. So obviously I did loads of work experience at veterinary surgeries and things like that. Everything was basically gearing up for me to go into veterinary science. And then I went through a bit of a phase at school and I dropped chemistry A-level. And if any of you are wanting to go into veterinary science, you will know it's pretty much impossible to get into veterinary science university without a chemistry A-level. So that kind of shut a lot of doors for me. And back then I didn't even know that zoology was a thing at all. So I actually went to university to study oceanography, which is basically, it's kind of like maths, physics and chemistry, and you're learning how to calculate wave propagation and things like that. And it is not what I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be kind of like geography of the ocean, and I loved geography, combined with a marine biology element. So anyway, I did the year in oceanography, didn't really enjoy it. And whilst I was at university, I found out about zoology, which it just sounded perfect for me. And so after that year, I switched course. And for those of you who are a little bit unsure as to what zoology is, it's basically a biology degree, but instead of having to do modules like plants, you can really focus on anything animal related. So ecology, evolution, animal behavior, marine vertebrates, topics in conservation. I mean, you can pick whatever you like. And it was just perfect. And the thing that I loved the most about my zoology course was all the field trips. And I just love being outside and I love that practical element. And if you guys are wanting to get into conservation, one of the things that you need to be doing at university is to be quite clever with what modules you pick. So fieldwork is really important for trying to get that job in the field. Sounds kind of obvious, but some people don't make that connection. So you want to be picking all of your modules based on what you want to do. For me, I knew I wanted to go into fieldwork. So as soon as those optional modules came out, I was on my university system waiting to pick all of the field modules. And because of that, I was lucky enough to go to places like Spain, Belize. I went to Madagascar for 6 weeks. I went to Kenya on a field trip. And so everything kind of started from there. Anyway, I did my 3-year zoology course, and because I enjoyed it so much and I was thinking about maybe doing a PhD, I then went on to do a master's in research in wildlife conservation. And I did that at the University of Southampton in the UK. And this was a really unique course because basically it's a collaboration between the university and the nearby zoo. So actually all of my lectures were at the zoo and I was taught by their conservation biologists. And basically that zoo had links with lots of different countries abroad. So they had on the ground projects that they funded and they worked upon. And because my master's was a master's in research, it meant that we were allowed to go to those countries and do our research project there. So basically, I got the opportunity to go to Kenya for 3 months, and I stayed at Lewa Wildlife Conservancy in Kenya, where I was researching black rhinos, which was just incredible. And it was absolutely the best thing I ever decided to do in my life. And from that master's, I got so many opportunities that I wouldn't otherwise have got. And some of the questions I get from you guys are, do you have to do a master's to get into field work? And I wouldn't say yes. Masters are quite expensive now, and if I had just gone straight into fieldwork after my undergrad and used the money from my masters to fund volunteer work, that's a way to get into fieldwork. But what the masters does is it gives you a leg up over lots of other people. It's something extra that you have, and it also gives you loads of connections. And the thing about conservation is networking. You really do have to get yourself out there. You have to get yourself chatting to people. If you're at university, sign up for conferences. Go and see people whose work you're interested in, or someone who's studying a species that you love. Get a drink at the bar afterwards and go and chat to them. You'll be really surprised by how much work is done at events like that. And if you get on with that person and you manage to give them your contact details, or you manage to get theirs, that's one more connection that you've got. And you never know, the next time they've got a job free, they might think of you. So that's definitely one of the top tips. Just networking, and just be confident. Even if you're not that type of person that likes to go out and make conversation, just pretend you are. They don't know any different, do they? But yeah, so I finished up my master's in 2018, and I really don't want you guys to feel like I've made it and I know everything, and that's not the case at all. And actually, this time last year, I was working full-time in a restaurant just after graduation, because I needed money and I wasn't getting jobs. But the fact is that I was applying and I was getting experience in what people wanted to see on my CV and things like that. And I think one of the things that really helped me personally was actually this Instagram. So I set it up maybe, I think it was 2.5 years ago now. It was in between my undergrad and my master's. And at the time, it was literally just something for me to put my photos there, photos that I'd taken on research trips and things like that. And luckily it kind of took off, and I think my Instagram and all the blog posts that I do and my website has been a big help in actually getting me interviews. With conservation, you'll find that you apply for a lot of jobs, you don't hear back. You apply for a lot of jobs, you might get an interview, but you probably don't land it unless you've been in the field for a couple of years. But I think having something different, so like my Instagram and my blogs and the things that I write for my website, it just gave me that little edge over someone else who didn't have it. And yeah, I might not have got the job, but it landed me an interview. And every single interview that you have, you're learning. Interviews are a massive learning experience, and you just get an idea of the type of questions that people ask you, what kind of answers they're looking for, and also like what your strengths and weaknesses are. And you never know that the next interview you get, you might land the job. So that's also really, really important. So I've got loads of notes because I didn't want to miss anything out. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to say was just try to build up your CV. There's probably a lot of you watching who are maybe just out of university and you're struggling to get that job, because conservation jobs, they often ask you to have at least 2 years of working experience, but then no one gives you that working experience. So it is a bit of a catch-22. And, a lot of the time to get that experience, you do have to do volunteer work. And you don't have to do that abroad. There's lots of organisations that you can work for here in the UK that keep everything low cost. But there's also ways in which you can fund that volunteer experience if you need it. So, for example, I worked in that restaurant for 6 months. And by working in that restaurant, just for that short period of time, I saved up a lot of money. So in terms of getting that experience, I would just say get yourself out there. There's certain tick boxes that people want in terms of their employees, and you've got to make sure that you are hitting that. There's lots of organisations who also give you jobs for short-term basis. So things like Operation Wallacea, who I worked for in South Africa. They have expeditions all over the world that only run during the summer. So it's a short 2-month, 3-month contract, but those contracts are just chipping away at your CV. They're just adding little building blocks. And if you can manage to get a staff position, often you're only paying for your flights or something like that. And, £600 to South Africa, if you're spending 2 months in the bush, if you were going on safari for 2 months, you'd have to spend a hell of a lot more than that anyway. So it's kind of worth it. And as I said, there are ways to fund it. You don't have to just rely on parents or things like that. I worked in the restaurant and it wasn't what I wanted to do, but because I did that, it's led me on to lots of different things, and I've got where I wanted to go. So there are lots of different ways of getting to where you want to go. So just some of the things that I wanted to say in terms of applying for jobs and stuff. One of the biggest tips I have is don't ever look at the job requirements. Like, don't let that put you off if you don't have the experience they're looking for. I cannot tell you the number of jobs I applied for who were looking for a PhD or something like that. And I don't have a PhD, but it didn't stop me from applying. And a couple of those jobs I didn't hear anything from, but others I got an interview. And again, interview is experience. So that's definitely really important. And then just like chatting to people, networking, even through things like Instagram, I've met so many incredible people on Instagram who are really like-minded, or who might think of you the next time there's a job or things like that. It's just, conservation is a really, really small world, and especially if you want to go into a specific species, there will be people who have been working on that species for years and years and years. And if you can get to know them, you also get your name out there, which is really important. And even with Lara, so I originally went to Lara Wildlife Conservancy for my master's project, and from that I actually had the opportunity to go back and work for them again. So basically they managed to raise enough money to fund a follow-up project on my rhino research. When I was there originally, it was the wet season and they wanted to have a dry season comparison, and I would never have had the opportunity to do that if I hadn't gone out there with my masters and then met everyone and really got along with them and worked really hard. And it is all about the people that you meet along the way, and everything that you do will sort of lead on to something else. And even the job that I have now, so I'm actually the dolphin research manager and marine conservation coordinator for a project called African Impact, which runs in Zanzibar. Obviously, I'm not in Zanzibar right now. I had to come home because of everything that was happening with the coronavirus. My job is still there, so hopefully when everything picks back up and all the travel restrictions are lifted, hopefully I will head back out there. But I have no experience in dolphin research, but everything that you pick up along the way is transferable. And the reason I even got that job, I actually applied for a different job with that organisation, for one in Zambia, which would have been in the bush, so a little bit more like I'm used to with rhinos and elephants and stuff. Unfortunately, by the time I applied for that role, it had already been filled. And then I got an email from them 2 weeks later asking if I'd be interested in the dolphin job. So Just like little things, you've got to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid of rejection, and also don't let the rejection get you down. It's going to happen in any single sector that you go into, whether it's, I don't know, accountancy or whatever. You're always going to get rejection. And I think the main thing about getting into conservation is just determination and perseverance. Don't let anyone stop you from getting there. If you want it, go out there and get it. And even if that means you have to work in a restaurant for a year whilst you're saving up money so you can do a volunteer job, do it. Everyone has a different way of getting there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will do my best to save this and probably try and upload it to YouTube at some point. But yeah, I hope it was useful, especially for those of you who are at university and sort of thinking about your next stages. Again, just have determination, perseverance, and yeah, just try and do something that sets you apart from other people, something that's going to make you stand out. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Have a really lovely evening, everyone, and yeah, enjoy being in lockdown.